Hey, it's Sela Social Studies.
Hey guys, and welcome back to Sealis Social Studies. Today we're going to be covering the Dinner Party Compromise, otherwise known as the Compromise of 1790. So, Secretary of the Treasury Alexander Hamilton of New York, Secretary of State Thomas Jefferson of Virginia, and member of the House of Representatives from Virginia, James Madison, had a very special connection in American history. One of those connections between these three men was the Compromise of 1790, or what we call the Dinner Compromise. When one talks about American politics, it's kind of strange to call such an important compromise the Dinner Compromise, and I'll get into why it has such a strange name in a minute. If you remember what I mentioned in the previous lessons about how Secretary of the Treasury Hamilton felt about the national debt, you should remember that I said that Hamilton felt that the national debt would be a blessing to America. He understood that establishing a national debt will give the United States a good line of credit, which is what the country required to be able to trade internationally with European powers, especially England. Hamilton believed that the federal government was required to shoulder the burden of the Revolutionary War and those Revolutionary War debts. He felt that the government should assume these debts of the states, combine it with the federal debt, and amass a large national debt. Hamilton believed that the federal government could start paying back this large pile of debt, which would improve the country's credit, which would put the United States in a position to trade with other nations. Secretary Hamilton proposed two parts of his plan. One is that the government should pay back the country's debt at face value, not to give a decrease in the value because because the more debts we had, or the more debts a country would have, the better the credit it would have. Hamilton also proposed that the federal government should assume these debts that the states racked up during the war. The Continental Congress had approved about $37 million during the Revolutionary War on the federal level, and the states had amassed a whopping $114 million of debt from the Revolutionary War. Alexander Hamilton was asking a nation that was unsure of itself economically to burden $151 million in debt. I mean, now that we're like $7 trillion in debt, 151 million doesn't seem so much, but trust me, during the time of the Revolutionary War, it was. Now, Southerners like Thomas Jefferson and James Madison strongly disagreed with this plan. Jefferson believed that a national debt would be a curse. The Virginians also believed that Virginia should not have to pay the debts of northern states from the war, that each state can pay their own debts. This was easy for the anti-federalist Jefferson to argue because during a war, a small state like Massachusetts accrued more debt than such a large state like Virginia. You have to remember where the war started and where many of the battles were fought. Southern states were also continuously making money during the war by selling and trading tobacco that was harvested by enslaved Africans. For these reasons, Jefferson and Madison believed that the South should not get taxed to pay off the debts of a more indebted northern state. Arguing continued about the national debt until one day Thomas Jefferson and James Madison concocted a plan. The two Virginians sent an offer to Alexander Hamilton to meet at Jefferson's house over dinner, hence the name the Dinner Compromise. Jefferson and Madison discussed how the capital of the United States was located in places like New York and Philadelphia. It was never located in the southern states. So they felt that if the nation's capital was always in the north, then the southern states would always face an uphill battle when legislation was proposed in Congress. So the three men agreed on a compromise. Jefferson and Madison told Hamilton that Virginia would not block Hamilton's legislature from assuming the state's debts, and in return, the national capital would move to the south on the banks of the Potomac River, where it's located today in Washington, D.C. So the capital is where it is today because of a dinner meeting between three powerful men in 1790. Pretty cool, right? Alexander Hamilton got what he wanted. The federal government assumed the state's debts from the Revolutionary War, and Jefferson got what he wanted. The capital was moved to the south. So who ultimately wins? Well, Hamilton got what he wanted. The government assumed the debts, the United States stayed out of the French Revolution, and the nation continued to trade with England. Hamilton also kept urging the government to build a strong international economy, which today we have, and he wanted to create a national bank. The national bank would place private investors in control of the economy of the United States, and in 1791, with Southern opposition, the Bank Act of 1791 was passed, which created the first national bank in the United States. However, Thomas Jefferson would become the third president of the United States and double the size of the country westward with the Louisiana Purchase and support westward expansion. That footprint that these men left on our country was huge, and we could still see many Hamiltonian and Jeffersonian ideas in our nation today. So it's up to you. Who do you think won? Do you think we won because our economy is the way that Hamilton wanted it? Or do you think we won because we did practice manifest destiny and make it all the way to from the Atlantic to the Pacific, just like Jefferson wanted? And we still do a whole lot of farming in the United States, but we do a lot of trade. So who won? I'll see you next time.